All right, guys, I think we're going to get started and crack on. So firstly, thank you and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. It's on the Level Up programme. So I talked briefly about this last week in the town hall about what it was and what's coming. And this is the first chance that we're bringing this, or the first time that we're bringing this to you guys as our employees, and to tell you a bit more about the programme and what it is and why we're doing it as well. What's the reason for us implementing this now, and why do we think it's beneficial for you guys? So we're joined today by a few panelists as well. So we're going to have a bit of a Q&A from some people in the business who have either gone through it already or have done something similar in previous businesses, and they're going to share their experiences and insights with us too. But what we really want to do is just introduce you a little bit of an overview about why we're doing this and what it is, what the program actually entails. So you guys have heard about this now a few times about the Level Up program, but we want to really take you into more of the detail about it. So the agenda for today is our new values and competencies. So we're just going to touch on that again, as to set an expectation as to what it is that we're actually doing, and then how we're going to embed that across the business. So some of the initiatives that we've actually already put into play in order to enable everyone to start living and breathing these values and these competencies, and then moving into the kind of performance management Level Up program as well. So looking at what it actually is as a concept, why do we do it, and then what the program entails. So just to kickstart with our values and competencies then, we released this in the quarterly all hands, and we've talked about it at various points, and all the managers that are on the call will have already gone through this in a bit more detail as well. But there's 3 values that we really live by in the business. So curious, relentless, and customer obsessed. And what we don't want this to be is something that's just there as a word, and it doesn't give any meaning, or it doesn't have anything behind it. So what we did is we looked at it and said, okay, what does it actually take to be curious? Or what does it take to be relentless? And what are those competencies, those core competencies that we need from our people in the business, so that we can actually start to live these values as well, not just talk about them. So if you haven't already, I do really recommend you just go onto the terminal and download this PDF. I've put it onto 3 slides just to go through it today, but this is a PDF document that you can print it, you can save it to your desktop, but it allows you to see what our competencies are and what the criteria is for it as well. So under the curious value, you've got 3 competencies. One of them is curiosity. So that kind of thirst for knowledge, the ability to question and kind of always want to find out more and understand more about the business, or more around what a situation is, or how something works. Critical thinking is then kind of taking it to that next level where you start to weigh up the pros and cons of something. So interpreting it and having kind of open-mindedness to things, and then leading into the problem solving aspect. So creative problem solving is putting some imagination to it. How do other people do it? How should we be doing it? Why should we be doing it like that? Really coming up with a lot of new ideas and collaborating with teams ultimately as well, and understanding that from different aspects and different perspectives as well, I suppose. The second one that we've got then is relentless. So there's 3 competencies that sit behind that one. It's grit, adaptability, and tenacity. So being conscientious in your approach to things, having that kind of sense of urgency where you want to fix problem and fix it quickly as well, and kind of get to new realms of the way that we work and to new ideas, being open to things. So the adaptability piece in particular is really crucial here. So being able to respond to change. We do a lot of change in Payment Sense. We're changing constantly, and we need to have people that are able to kind of pivot and go in new directions and change priorities. And that's a really big piece of who we are as a business, and how we kind of have success and we get to market so quickly with things. Having agility, so being able to apply your learnings from every experience. The determination to actually see something through as well. So tenacity, I talked there about urgency earlier. So having that kind of urgency to get things out and get them done quickly. And yes, they're not always going to be the very best. They're not always going to be perfect from day dot, but how do you then kind of, I suppose, adapt that product or that process as well, so that you are able to deliver quite quickly for the business. And then the final value is customer obsessed. So empathy, teamwork, and detail orientated. So understanding a customer's perspective, and that can be a paying customer, or it can be a customer within the business, an internal customer as well. So understanding who it is that you're actually working with and what it is you're seeking to achieve here, and taking a real interest in that and the way that they work, and the way that the things that they need in order to do their job and to make us more successful as a business. And a lot of that is teamwork as well. I mean, participation is a huge one, being aligned to people, not just in your own internal teams, but actually being aligned to people outside of your teams and in different departments. And then detail orientation. So looking at kind of the nitty gritty bits, I suppose, is the key here. So being proactive, working on being consistent with everything that you do, having pride in the work that you produce and that you submit, and being able to share that with a lot of people as well. And a good way to do this is well, it goes back to that teamwork bit. Being able to kind of speak to different people and collaborate with different people across the business as well will help you get that detail in there and help you get that orientation. And so what we really want to do is bring these values and competencies to life. And we're going to do that through the Level Up program, and how we can actually start to develop you guys and give you plans in place that you're able to do it. So you'll work with your managers on this over the next few months. And today we're going to just sort of take you through how we're going to do that and how that process is. There is some things that we've already introduced. So we have recruitment from the recruitment side of things, and through the induction and onboarding of new starters. We hire for our values. So we're running some masterclasses actually in a couple of weeks on how to hire for each of these values. But we're really working closely with the talent team on how we can actually bring that to life as well, and make sure the people that we're onboarding and that we're bringing into the business live these values. And then the second piece is a payment sense 101. So Frances, who's one of our guest speakers today, she's working on a session that just gives every new starter a basic introduction to who we are as a business, how we work. There's a segment there on the values and the competencies, and then it gives an overall kind of view of the company as well. So that will be for every new starter. From a performance management point of view, it's the Level Up program. So having 6 monthly development plans that you guys can use and implement and start to work towards it. We've introduced the monthly recognition program, so the shout outs channel, which is always really busy and active, which is excellent to see. And then the awards program as well, so having the monthly recognition awards as well. And then from a training point of view as well, just some extra things that we're supplementing is getting started program. So every new starter has an online induction, as well as your executive sessions that you go through as well. You have an online induction, which is going to have all the values piece on there as well. And we're close to releasing that actually. We're hoping to have that ready in the next 2 weeks. And then masterclasses and lunch and learns that we'll run throughout the year for you to kind of help hone in on these skills and improve them as well. So that's it from kind of values and competencies piece. I think the next piece then is to really explore performance management. So I'm going to hand over to Chloe, who's going to take you through the next aspect.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. So yeah, as Sheila mentioned, what we're going to be doing today is looking at our new personal development program, Level Up. But before I kind of go into the detail on what that looks like, I wanted to just set a bit more kind of high level context on where this fits into what we say, the wider concept of performance management. So Sheila, if you could just go to the next slide for me, please. I guess I first wanted to talk about what do we actually mean by performance management. And I think the first thing to say is it's the concept that can mean lots of different things, and there isn't like a one size fits all or one definition for it. And I think what's most important about performance management is that it's tailored and that it aligns to the business and what the business want to achieve, their priorities, and also the culture. So how you might have seen it done in different organizations won't be right or wrong in it, and it will all look very different. And I think as well, it won't just vary by organization, it's very likely to vary by role and team, and how performance management looks in a technology team is likely to look quite different in a sales team. But what it tends to describe is activities which establish objectives for individuals and teams, so that really they can see their part in the organization strategy, and they can see how they can contribute to the business. It should improve performance, it should drive high performance amongst employees, teams, and then ultimately that translates into the business as well. And it's quite often linked to things like career progression. It might be bonuses or commissions, and salary reviews as well. So that's what we mean by performance management. And I think the next important thing is that it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot, particularly in recent years. I think most of us may have experienced what I call the dreaded annual appraisal, which used to happen. You might have had like a 10-page document and sat with your manager, and they kind of brought up that mistake that you made 10 months ago, and there's nothing you can do about it now. You leave feeling a bit deflated. It takes a lot of time, and I'm not convinced there's a whole lot of value in it. And I think what's great is that probably since around 2015, a lot of companies and kind of Adobe, Google, Microsoft took the lead on this really, and turning it and thinking of it more as a continuous process, something that's happening day to day. And what's kind of crucial about it and this cycle is that it's underpinned by regular feedback, regular honest feedback. As I mentioned earlier, it's no good being told 10 months later, you know, where you've made a mistake. You need to know then and there so you can take action, you can improve, you can recognize what's gone wrong and also what's going right as well. And I think the other kind of really key important feature of this cycle is that it's not just a manager-driven activity. It's not something your manager does with you. This is something you as an employee, as an individual, should take responsibility and accountability for. You should want to improve your own skills and contributions, but also make improvements to the business and projects, processes. So there's this real kind of emphasis on accountability as well. So why bother? It's sounding like a lot. If you're doing it all the time, sounds maybe worse than just doing it once a year. There's tons of benefits to this. So I think as an employee, one of the most important things is that you should know exactly what's expected of you and exactly how you're performing. So what's going really well, and actually where could you develop? Where could you be better, and where could you learn? I've mentioned this already, but it should mean that you receive relevant and constructive feedback that you can take timely action to. And also, really importantly, it should mean that you can, you're aligning what you're doing and your priorities, what you're focusing on, to those of the business. So actually doing the work that matters most and is going to have the most benefit to the business. And really encouraging your growth and development. None of us just want to stand still and never improve. We all want to grow, we all want to develop. And if performance management is done well, that's what it should enable you to do. And why is it important for us? Sheila mentioned earlier, we want our values to be more than just words that we might see on a shiny screensaver on the terminal. We want people to live and breathe them. And I'm going to talk about how Level Up's going to help us do that specifically, but embedding our values is really important here. Culture of honest continuous feedback is very important for Payment Sense. We want everybody to be receiving it, everybody to be understanding and learning all the time. And then this idea of context. So George and Jan recently talked about our North Star of becoming the most trusted payments provider for independent businesses. And what is really important in this and all performance management here is that we help you guys understand how you can contribute to making this happen, because everybody has a role to play here. And we want you to thrive as well, right? I talked about it just then, but we want our employees to be the best that they can be and to be doing the best jobs that they can. So that's why it's important for us. And I think the second point is this isn't just a fluffy HR initiative that Sheila and I have thought, oh, this will be a nice thing to do. We're listening to you, we're listening to your feedback. And if you look at Office Vibe, feedback is actually one of our lower scoring elements. So if you see here, there's actually 20% of you who are dissatisfied with the frequency of feedback you're receiving from your manager. And there's also 24% of you who might be getting some feedback, but actually it's not really helping you improve. And 16% of you who feel that it's not specific. So I just really want to kind of reiterate that this is being done because we're listening to you. This helps you guys as employees. So we really want you to engage with this. And yeah, just quickly before I go into Level Up, I want to kind of make clear that performance management is a lot of different activities that kind of fit together. And when we talk about Level Up, this doesn't replace any other kind of activity. This doesn't replace your monthly KPIs that you might have, or your quarterly objectives, or your SOAP documents. And it definitely doesn't replace the need to have these regular one-to-ones. As Sheila mentioned, this is a 6-monthly cycle, and by no means do we want managers just to store up all the feedback and talk about it only every 6 months. That should be happening all the time. When we talk about Level Up, this is your personal development. So it's taking yourself a little bit outside of that day-to-day work that you're doing, and thinking kind of a bit higher level on where you can improve as an individual. So just want to make that clear. So Level Up, what is it? How does it work? So what we want is that every employee, every 6 months, have what we're calling a Level Up session with their managers. And what Level Up is underpinned by is 360 feedback. So your manager will work with you to collect 360 feedback from different people in the business, and I'll talk about how they'll do that. And then they'll use that feedback, and together you will use it to identify where can you develop, where can you improve, and look for opportunities. And then together create a bit of a plan for the next 6 months. So what are the things that you're going to master? How can the business help? How can your manager help? And what are you going to commit to? Use that next 6 months to undertake that development, and then basically do it all again, and hopefully see the kind of results of what's happened. So if we look into how it's facilitated, as I mentioned, the first step is getting this 360 feedback. So what we've created is a really simple Google form. There's 2 parts to it. The first part is a start, stop, continue approach. So what should you start doing that you're not doing? What should you stop doing? And what are you doing really well and actually you should keep doing? And then the second part is all around our values, and thinking, how regularly are you being curious? How regularly are you being customer obsessed and relentless? So individuals will complete this form about you. And I think it's really important to say, you need to make sure that you're sending this to a variety of different people. It's called 360 because you want to be getting all different angles. So you don't just want to be sending this to your direct teammates. You want to think about other people in the business, maybe in other departments that you're working with closely, maybe different levels in the business, different management levels. And agree who they are with your manager. We want this to be a joint decision. You might have some ideas of who you'd like feedback from, and your manager might also have some ideas. So make sure you agree those names together. We recommend at least 5 to get a good amount of feedback that you can actually take action on. And we are really encouraging transparency in this process. Individuals who are giving this feedback, we don't want you to hide behind an anonymous button. You should feel comfortable giving that feedback and doing so using your name. So that's how it works. Simple Google form. You might already have seen some of them going around already. So that's the first step of Level Up. Okay. So that process, and I do want to make the point that you should always allow time for that feedback to be gathered. Some people might be hit with quite a few forms at once, and we need to manage expectations that we can't expect people to be doing these, turning around in a day. So probably allow a couple of weeks for that feedback to come in. And once it's there, your manager will add it into a Google document, as well as adding their own feedback, because that's of course just as important as other people in the business. So really simply, they'll put it in a Google document, and then there's a bit of a choice here. So some people might prefer to have this feedback in advance. I am certainly one of those people, and I'm going to talk later about 360 examples of things that I've had happen, but my natural gut is always to be defensive. And then I think when I might read something, and if I was confronted with it in a meeting, my natural reaction might be, I don't do that. That's not true. That's rubbish. Whereas if I've had a bit of time to digest, a few days to really think about where did that feedback come from? What intention did that person have? And actually, recognize it, I'm more likely to come to a meeting ready to take action and be constructive about it. So other individuals might be completely different. So agree that with your manager. Some people might just prefer not to mull over it for too long and just do it in the moment. So talk to your managers about that. But essentially, once that feedback's in, you will have this level up meeting with your manager. Now, what you should be doing is looking at that feedback together, talking about it. How did it make you feel? What parts really resonated with you? Maybe there were certain parts that you don't necessarily think are totally fair, but kind of have that discussion with your manager and use it then to identify, and you'll see at the top right here on the box, the 3 things that you want to master in the next 6 months. And I think the second part is really important. It's how they'll help us achieve our mission. And that's where your manager comes in. So this should be led by you as an employee. You are responsible for your development. You should come thinking of ideas, thinking of where you can improve. But your manager is there to help provide you with the context. So to make sure that these are actually things that are relevant, that are important, that are helpful for the business and helpful for your role as well. So together you should agree them, but I do want to stress that you should try and, be prepared and think of these things and take that responsibility. Once you've identified them, together with your manager, think about what can the business do or your manager do and commit to help you achieving them. And then what are you going to commit to? And that's what that second box there is to keep track of. After that, is there any training that you might benefit from to help you get there? And Sheila and her team are going to talk about how they can help you and support you with that. And are there any other projects maybe that you could get involved with that might help support that development as well? And then the last box is also equally as important in terms of what are you most proud of? So I think, a lot of this is around, where can you improve, looking at the constructive points, but it's also really important to recognize the good stuff, what's gone really well, where are you doing really well? So I don't want you to think this whole conversation is just picking apart things that might not be going so well. It's really important to reflect on what's gone well as well. So that's the process. You would keep that document together with your manager and, go into it as regularly as you need to, keep track of it. And as I mentioned, the following 6 months, you sort of look back on what you've achieved. We've got some examples here. I'm not going to read them all out. I'll give you one example here on the right. So this person has put they would like to improve their business acumen. So what does the business do? How does it operate? How do all the different pieces fit together? And you'll see underneath, their manager has committed to helping them find which teams are best to meet first and prioritize that and really just point them in the right direction when they're not sure. And on the employee side, they're committing to shadowing teams around the business to understand better what they do day to day and actually just making more time to have conversations with departmental managers, booking in time to have those discussions. So we will share these slides with you. You can have a look at this document in more detail. But I think what's kind of probably more useful use of time is that we've got some fantastic panelists with us today. And we're actually going to kind of get them to talk firsthand about their experiences. As Sheila mentioned, most of them have actually gone through this already. And if they haven't, they've gone through very similar programs and have quite a lot of experience with delivering and receiving 360 feedback as well. So we're really excited to have Maria here, Hugo, Kieran, and Francis. So if I can ask you all to unshy yourselves and come on camera and join me, that would be great. Thanks, guys. And so we're just going to go into a bit of a Q&A session. If you want to ask your own questions to any of us, please do use the chat box below, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. So my first question, I'm going to put this to Hugo, what were your thoughts when you first heard about Level Up and the prospect of getting 360 feedback?
Hi all, thank you, Chloe. It's scary, right? When we think of giving feedback to someone, it's relatively simple in the sense as you are a manager, you are expected to give feedback. Right? So it's part of your role. But when you get feedback from someone in terms of your practices, it can be a bit scary. But at the same time, the perspective that you get the chance to not only receive feedback from your manager, that you are also expecting that on a regular basis, but having feedback from the person or the people who work on a day-to-day basis, and they don't feel that they have the right scope or opportunity to give you feedback about a particular thing or a particular way you deal with people. It's enlightening, right? It empowers us in a way that nothing else does. Your manager gives you feedback in his perspective, what should be doing in terms of a particular set of things, but having feedback from all around you, it helps you to become a better professional and ultimately help the company in a whole new level. It seems like I'm always skeptical in terms of these people's thing and HR stuff, but it's not. It's really empowering, I think, and it brings us our ability to develop our skill set in a whole new way.
Thank you. Yeah, and I like your comment there about you're a bit skeptical like HR stuff. And I think what's hopefully good about this program is it's simple, it's lightweight, and it's not going to take loads and loads of time. It's something that and it can really help you improve. So thanks, Hugo. I'm going to ask the same question to Kieran as well. What did you think when you first heard about it?
Yeah, kind of similar to Hugo. It's a very, very daunting kind of prospect, excuse me, an idea, because obviously I believe I do, and I'm sure that everybody who works here has nothing but the best intentions for everything that they do, and working with others, they only have the best intentions to make sure that, you know, if you're looking after a team that they succeed, or if you're working within a team that you all succeed together kind of thing. And it's this opportunity that maybe those best intentions that you have and all that hard work that you're doing might not resonate with the rest of the team, and you don't hear about this at all, and then this one opportunity comes up now for everyone to share their feedback, and it's this idea of, is everyone just going to come back and say all of those things I've been trying to do or been doing hasn't quite hit home with them. So it is a very, very daunting prospect. But like I said before, if we look at the feedback that we're getting and how everybody's saying, or there's a lot of people saying that, you know, we're not getting enough feedback, and that's what we're kind of really looking for. We have to just kind of, you know, embrace that uncomfortableness a little bit. So, you know, we really have to just kind of, you know, take it on the chin a little bit, and, you know, and this is the bits where we're really going to grow from. So yeah, it's daunting, but I definitely see how necessary it is.
That's really interesting, Karen. And where you talk there about uncomfortableness, that kind of leads me on to my second question. So I'll take it to Maria on this one. But obviously, it's the first time you start doing it and you start to receive constructive feedback, it can be really overwhelming, if anything. And I suppose what I think everyone would probably like to know is, like, can you tell us a time that you received constructive feedback and how you took it on and how you reacted to it as well?
Of course. So in my previous role, I was a management consultant, and I had just joined the firm. It was one of the leading management consultant firms. And in these type of jobs, you get almost weekly formal and very quantitative feedback. And this is to help you get back on track in case you're deviating, because you're day in, day out working with a client, and anything that you're not excelling at, the client will think that obviously they're paying a lot of money for you to be there. So that doesn't come out great. So in my first project, my manager gave me some really harsh feedback. He told me that he thought I would never get a top mark because of my communication skills. And that was obviously a really hard thing to take on, because I was working super hard, long nights, early mornings. And obviously it was really tough to swallow, but he gave me very detailed feedback of why he thought that in my communication skills. And obviously it's not, I mean, probably he shouldn't have said that in that way. Like, I don't think you'll ever get a top mark. But it helped me, like, I was like, yeah, I'll prove you wrong. So first it was that. But second, actually the detail, I mean, it was a bit of an assholey way of saying it, but the detail that he gave me was quite useful. So after, obviously, at first, I took it really hard. I mean, it was very, very hard to hear. But then, like, I looked, because it was all written down with examples, everything, and it helped me be like, okay, I'm working all these hours in producing the material, but I'm not leaving enough time to, let's say, prepare my presentation or prepare what I'm going to say in a meeting or things like that. And that actually helped me. And I mean, obviously he wasn't my favorite manager in the world, but it did help me ultimately become a better consultant and get the top marks. So yes, I would say that, like, I do. It is difficult, but yeah, as long as obviously you are not saying things like this, or if you do, you try to, if you are hearing things that sound this way, you do try to detach it a little bit. It is always useful.
Yeah, you're right, though, when you hear it in the moment, I think it can be very easy to kind of feel really panicked and upset by it. Take some time to reflect back and look at actually what is the meaning underneath it, what am I not doing, and can I improve on it? Francis, I'm interested to know as well from your point of view if there's any, like, how you've taken on difficult feedback.
I think feedback, especially when it's a new sort of process, it's not always easy to take. And me personally, kind of in the beginning, it's sort of a defensive thing. So when somebody's saying to you something that you might not do so well, my first kind of reaction is to be like, well, actually, I did it because of this reason. And I know, and I kind of justify it to myself and but I guess in this process, I've learned that about myself over the years. And in this process, when I had my 360 review, I was already aware of that. So I made a conscious effort to listen to something negative and then take it away with me. So I didn't agree or disagree at the time. I just kind of listened to it, thought about it, went away and tried to put myself in that person's shoes to understand where they're coming from, what their intentions were and why they said it. And then try and see, how it can be constructive. And actually, when I thought about it, it was actually something that I could take away and change, and I have done. And it's something that has helped me to improve my work going forward anyway. So I would say when it comes to taking on feedback, always try not to be reactive and think about it, take it away with you, and then try and put yourself in that person's shoes to see a different perspective before you actually take action, if you do take action.
Yeah, I really like that, Francis. And I guess I'm quite biased. I think we've got a pretty fantastic bunch of people at Payment Sense. So I think it's really important to remember that everybody is giving this feedback with very good intentions most of the time, and trying to help you, all the time. Actually, everybody is giving it with good intentions. So I really like what you said there about taking a step back and thinking about where they may be coming from. On a similar sort of theme, I suppose, Hugo, question for you. It can be hard to not feel emotionally reactive to feedback. So how do you detach the personal from the professional when you get that feedback?
And I don't know if the questions were made deliberately from Sheila, but they're always targeting the way I'm very passionate, right? And it's tough. When you are passionate by nature on the things you believe and you want to deliver, or you want to show other people where you think is the best route to take, it's a fine balance, the emotional aspect or the way you phrase feedback. So trying, first of all, to understand if you are receiving feedback, the way that, or the way that that person is giving you feedback, detach the tone, for example, for this, and look at the substance like Francis mentioned, and think about what is the substance of what that person is telling you, so you can take that on board regardless of the form, regardless of the tone, or because it's really hard for me the same when I give feedback. I speak loud, I'm passionate, and I believe in stuff. So sometimes people tend to defocus from what matters, that is the substance of the message and what's important. So we need to be more cold and think about the stuff that is being said, and detaching from the emotional aspect, which for me is very difficult because I see myself as a passionate person, and I'm very passionate when I defend something, but it can offend people, and it can put people thinking about stuff that doesn't matter. The substance is not the form, but we need to think about the form as well. It's really important how you do it in a constructive way, and the way that you want that people to take on board or not what you're saying, because people are not necessarily have to accept what you're saying as a constructive feedback and taking on board. I don't know if I answered the question, Chloe.
No, yeah, I think you did, definitely. I'm going to ask that same question to Maria as well.
I feel the same as you. I'm obviously a very passionate person as well, and one of the things of this whole process is, and Steve explained it very nicely to me, it's like, well, if you're exceptional in something, there's obviously something else that will be lacking. And like for Hugh and I, like we're very passionate people. We get very involved with our work, and that obviously has the blind spot of that we can be emotional, reactive, all of those things. So I think there's a part of me that will always be reactive to feedback. And that's why with my managers, I generally ask for feedback in like, you know, a time that is separate from any other meeting. I mean, obviously it's not always possible, but like in my previous job, I will always ask if I could have the feedback before so that I could read it and digest it, because I know that I will react and I will be pissed off a little bit, and then I will, you know, I will take it in and then I will work on it. And I think the people who I've worked with, hopefully, will say that even if I react initially, I will take it on and find ways of doing it. So yeah, I would say have a discussion with both your manager and your team on how each one prefers to get feedback, and make sure that it's a session detached from another meeting in hopefully a private setting. Well, I mean, in the office in a private setting is what I meant. But anyways, you know what I mean.
That's really good. No, Maria, that's really helpful tips as well. And you're right, it should be detached from meetings as well, so you can actually pay some attention to it and ask questions and kind of understand it a bit more. I'm just really interested to ask Chloe a question, actually. So Chloe, you mentioned earlier that you had one that was kind of life-changing feedback for you. Can you like tell us a bit more about that? What was that?
Yeah, sure. Life-changing, I think his ego might blow a bit too out. I wonder if he's on the call or not. But I had an incident at Payment Sense just after I joined, so nearly 3 years ago. And I like Hugo and Maria, actually feel very passionate. I'm a bit of an HR geek, so when I'm showing something or excited about something, I feel really, really passionate about it. So I was passionate about an HR system, which I know sounds, many of you can't believe, but I was showing it and I was presenting it to Steve Jason. I hope he doesn't mind me saying it. And he was kind of questioning and asking me, and I, like I said earlier, my defensiveness was just coming out, and I was, well, no, this is the way it is. This is where it has to be. This is what, you know, listen to me. I'm telling you this, you know, and we ended up having a bit of an altercation. And, you know, and I still came away from it going, well, I know I was right because my HR system's right. And all credit to my boss, Jack, because he sat me down and talked to me and said, Chloe, sometimes you do have a tendency to be a little bit defensive about the stuff that you're doing. And no one had ever told me that before. You know, I'd never been told that. And ever since that moment, and I'm not saying I'm perfect because I don't think it's one conversation that makes you perfect, and I still sometimes feel like that, but ever since that time, I make a very conscious effort to think about when I'm showing things that I might feel very strongly about, other people, it might not fit perfectly in their world, they might not like it, and just making sure that I'm thinking about how that person might be perceiving it. And I'm also, when I'm being given feedback that I might not like, just taking a moment before I think, before I speak. So yeah, life-changing, maybe let's not tell Steve that, but definitely work-changing. And I like to think it's made me a lot better.
Thank you. Francis, do you have any examples that you could share?
I do, probably not as life-changing as Chloe's. But one example that I'd like to share is very early on in my career. So it was probably my first professional role. I came from a customer service background. I was a store manager in retail. So I was always, you know, verbally speaking to people and leading a team and all that kind of stuff. And when I was in, you know, my first office job, I kind of felt like a caged animal because I was stuck at a desk. But I had a really great relationship with my manager, and we were in a quiet office, and people would always talk over each other's screens and stuff. And, you know, it was a very open place to communicate. And I got into a habit of just asking a question as it came up. And because I was still learning loads of different things, I probably had more questions. I asked more questions than I needed to. And a bit of feedback that my manager gave me was, you know, if you have a question, maybe think about whether you can try and find that information yourself before you ask, or whether that question needs to be answered now and you can save it for when we have our one-to-one, so we have stuff to talk about. And at first I was like, oh, she doesn't want me to ask her questions, and I feel really awkward. And that's how I took it at first. But when I thought about it, it's changed the way I work. I worked from then on in every single role that I've done. So now whenever I you know, I think that I want to ask somebody a question like Sheila's my manager now, and we have a great relationship, but it doesn't mean that I can look up and ask her every single question that comes to my mind, because I also value her time. So it's about understanding, you know, that it's not just you want to answer this question now so it doesn't interrupt your own workflow, because actually you're interrupting somebody else's workflow by stopping them too. So yeah, that's something I've taken away from a piece of feedback that's changed the way I work completely.
Amazing. Good. The next question is actually really similar to one we've had in the Q&A box. I'm sort of going to merge the two. And I'm going to ask Maria to start with. And it's the Q&A says, have any of you had to fill in feedback for someone else? I find it just as scary having to tell other people what they can improve on, but in a constructive way. And yeah, our question was, how do you make sure the feedback that you give is constructive and useful? So hand that to you, Maria.
Of course. I think one of the things is first have the communication style discussion. So definitely have that before you give it, just so that everyone's like on the same page. Second, I think negative things come mostly from giving lazy feedback, like when you say, well, you could improve. For example, the manager I told you about could have said, just improve your comms style, and I would have been like, you know, great, where do I even start? But he actually took the time to give me examples and give me not examples actually, but more ideas that I could use, because examples can sometimes be a little bit like, oh, but you were not really there or something like that. So he did give me like ideas, like when you have a meeting, make sure that the hour before you block it so that you can go through the things that you're going to talk about, or, you know, practice the points that you want to make before a meeting if you get nervous in big settings, stuff like that. So I think the more you can think of ways the person can action it, the better, because sometimes it's just not helpful if, especially because the person already has a blind spot around it. Otherwise, you know, I had definitely a blind spot. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had that feedback. So it's just helpful if you make it actionable, and do make sure that you know that the reason why you're doing this is because you want to see people succeed. You want to see people thrive. So just when you're reading it back to yourself, just think of that. Is it coming out as, you know, I am in your corner and I'm trying to make you thrive, really.
100%. Yeah, it's thinking you're aiming to help them, aiming to assist them. I couldn't agree more. Hugo, anything else to add to that question?
Yes, I totally agree with Maria. And also imagine yourself giving that feedback face to face is really important. Don't hide yourself. Don't say it like you weren't able to do it as in a face-to-face meeting, looking at the other person's eyes, and see yourself the way you phrase something in a constructive and improvement-led way. Like Maria said, what's the point of saying that you're doing something wrong, that if you don't say why did you do it wrong and how can you improve if you have any ability, or if you know how that person could have done it differently, then it's on the other person to take that in or not, right? People are free to take that feedback and take it on and action on it. That's a different thing, but do it honestly and in an actionable way, and like you do it face to face. Don't hide under the name and the anonymity, because that's the way that you always know that you are able to improve and help the company, that is, help that professional and ultimately help the company to succeed and be better.
I think, sorry, Chloe, I think the last thing I would say is, like, when you're getting feedback, like, acknowledge that it's also uncomfortable, or it can be hard for the other person. So and it's really for you. So, you know, try to always be thankful, even to that manager who probably made me cry. Still, I was grateful that that he did it, because ultimately he helped me. Maybe it was a bit harsh, but helped me.
That makes sense. We've talked a lot as well about kind of taking feedback on and taking action from the feedback we get. But what about, like, if you get feedback that you really don't agree with, like, how do you handle that piece? I think it's really important to acknowledge that. So Kieran, over to you. Like, how, if you've had feedback you don't agree with, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because as we've been talking about already, it's hard enough to take feedback as it is, especially even if it's something that you're aware of. It's kind of, you know, well, other people are aware of it, so at least I'm aware of it too. But when it's something that maybe you're not aware of, it's very similar to kind of what you were saying before as well, Chloe, and I've experienced it myself, where you can get almost just mildly defensive straight away. So, well, that's never even crossed my mind. How can that even be a thing if somebody's calling this out? But if anything, it's probably even more important if you're being given feedback or something that you don't agree with, because maybe it's something you might not be aware of at this moment in time, and it might just be somebody bringing it to your attention. On the flip side of that, at the same time, there might be some things which are very, very small things which you could just absolutely disagree with. But on the whole, I think it's very, very important to actually process feedback, probably just as much as the ones that you do, because you might just be completely oblivious and unaware of it completely. So one thing I took, and I mentioned this when we were having a catch up yesterday, is I got a small bit of feedback that was on one of my 360s. My kind of instant kind of thinking of it was just to dismiss it, really kind of dismiss it. If I don't agree with it, you know, I wasn't aware of it beforehand, so I could just dismiss it. I think we need to take that on board just as much as the ones that we do agree with, because those ones that we're oblivious to, those ones that we're not sure of, it's, you know, taking somebody to actually take that time out and give that feedback and bring that to your attention. So yeah, I think it's very, very important to make sure that you process that and take that on board just as much as the feedback that you do agree with.
100%. I think, yeah, we're going to skip down just to our last question, and then because we have got a few in the Q&A box as well. So I'm going to throw the last question, I think, to Frances and say, with the Level Up programme, how did you prioritise the areas that you wanted to work on?
I think with my feedback, it was kind of, we had quite a few things that came out of it and quite a few things that we could turn into actions. But I think the most important kind of way of identifying which are priorities were which ones had an impact on the business and other people, and not just my own personal development. So I had three main things that came out of it, and one was around like business acumen and learning more about the business. And because my role covers kind of, I have to speak to everyone from all different departments, so it's really useful for me to learn more about the business in learning about what other departments do, and that will help me with my role, but also help me in the conversations I have with everyone else. Another one was around communication and decision making. So, you know, when to put a process in place and when not to, and how to communicate that out and coach and teach people through different processes. And again, that's something that has, depending on what the actual task is, can have a bigger impact on the business rather than just my role in isolation. So I think looking at stuff like that, the last one was completely something personal, and it was something that I wanted to develop and kind of tick off in my own career. So to me, it wasn't as high up on the priority list as the other things that, one, help me develop as a person in my role, but also can help impact the business.
That's really good. Yeah, thanks, Frances, for sharing that. And it was, I mean, I was the one that did your 360 feedback and did this whole Level Up for you. And I wasn't even aware that that's how you were prioritizing the things to do, because I completely left that discussion to you to kind of say, right, what do you want to work on and how does that work? So yeah, it's quite good to hear that that was your goal and that's what you were looking at. Okay, I think we've got just a couple of questions that are coming in. So the first one is anonymous, but I'll throw this to you, Chloe. Does this only apply to permanent employees, or does it apply to contractors as well?
It does only apply to employees. Yeah, it does. Have a discussion with your manager. I know some contractors here have been here quite a long time. Discuss with your manager if it works and it feels appropriate, you know, and they're happy to do it, then you can. But this is an employee program. Yeah.
Cool. And another one for you actually, Chloe, as well. So Will said that you mentioned that the feedback stats on Office Vibe were lower than you expect in some areas. Has this been addressed with those individual teams?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, so myself and members of the people team, we meet with all managers across the business every quarter on Office Vibe. So we really drill into each department, each manager group, and we look at where we can improve. So yeah, absolutely, we are always looking by department, and you're right to say, because it does vary completely across the teams. But yeah, we do drill down and we do spend time with managers looking at it.
Okay. And one last one for you, Chloe, as well. So is the 6-month cycle the same across everyone in payment sense, or is it dependent on each individual start date?
Yeah, really good question. We decided it's dependent on different start dates and individuals. The reason for that is, I don't know if you've ever worked in an organization where you have like June and December, and suddenly you have an inbox of 80 360 forms to complete, and managers are stressed, and it's also year end and all these things. So we didn't want to do that. So we wanted it to try and be spaced out as much as possible. And at this stage with managers, all we've asked them to do is complete this with one member of their team as we kind of move through the process. We've already kind of tweaked the form and made changes, and we're listening. So I guess it's important to have a bit of patience with this. Don't expect that your level up is going to be tomorrow. This will be kind of phased approach, and your manager will talk to you about when to expect your first conversation, but it will vary.
Great. Good. Okay. There doesn't seem to be any other questions. So guys, if there are any questions, pop them into the Q&A box. But what we're going to do to finish up, Steve Jason, is Maria going to be late to our catch up? If so, I have some feedback for her.
It could be life-changing, Maria, though.
Could be life-changing, true.
Okay, well, so in the spirit of kind of this whole theme on feedback and the 360 piece, some of you might be aware that the execs went through an exercise of doing 360 feedback, and then they gave it live as well to each other, so they read it out to each other as well. In the spirit of kind of open and honest and transparent feedback, George and Jan have actually kindly shared the feedback that they received. So we're just going to show you a few of those now. There's quite a few, obviously they've got the whole exec team have given them the feedback, so I'm conscious of time, but I'll just read out a couple of them so you can see the kind of feedback that they receive as well, and why this is really important for every single level of the business to be doing this. So just starting with one of George's, for start, he was one of the feedbacks he got from Ollie was it'd be helpful to see more of you and Jan outside of the all hands, to be more visible and approachable. I've pushed the PMs and designers in my team to get new ideas and new things in front of you, but there's always a hesitancy as they don't feel they can. Making yourself more visible and accessible will help to see the context to the units and teams across the business. Another one that we've got from, let's have a look, from Mike S, was set ideas in motion in a more controlled and considered way. Segmentation is a great example where a useful and reasonable request was not only a bigger exercise than I think George had anticipated, but the immediate pivot on it delayed other initiatives. Kicking it off is fine, but proactively ask teams to tell him what it will take, present realistic timelines and what will have to be sacrificed, give space for planning as we don't have unlimited or idle resources. And then you've got some stop feedback as well. So let's have a look. From Nick, changing direction so often, in some ways it's what makes our business so special, but it can go over the top. Jack, you've started to call out introverts and put them on the spot in meetings, which can be intimidating. I know it's with positive intent. And then if we look at the final one, which is continue, you've got one here from Mike. So the increase of collective sessions with the execs where we discuss as a group is great. Allowing shared context and broader understanding of the priorities, continue to build on this. From the other Mike, I really appreciate your interest and excitement around data. The intro to Wharton is fantastic, and I'd love to develop and work with you more closely on these ideas. So you can see like the difference in the feedback that they receive as well, and that's why it's so valuable to get 360. We'll take a look at Jan's as well, and then we'll just finish off with some questions. But let's go down to Steve. So I think you should get more involved in customer insights and product detail, looking, speaking, listening to customer feedback, etc., and speaking to the product teams, Daisy Green, etc. will help. Not only are these two things you're most passionate about, but they're nearly always the driver of your most creative ideas. Nick has said scheduling routine one-to-ones with the execs. Justin, perhaps intervening when discussions go off at tangents which aren't relevant at that time. Group sessions can wander frequently and be relevant to just a couple of people. And then you've got some stop feedback. We'll go for some of the shorter ones. Deciding the result of a meeting before it happens. Exec team meetings can sometimes just feel like sessions to convince as opposed to genuine discussion that might result in a different income. You wear frustration and sometimes irritation on your face when you don't agree with someone. It makes people less likely to say what they think. And you can be much harder on some individuals on the team, both in terms of expectations and how you respond to them in meetings. The result impacts team dynamics and morale. and then things to continue, you have a desire to cut through the noise and get to the bottom of something quickly and work at pace, which I really align with and think in most cases it works. I think as an exec team, we need to do more of this and not need to have everyone there for every discussion or meeting, as a lot of the time it's nice to be there, but not always relevant. Dreaming up new ways to make us great. I think we all agree that's something they're really good at. So you can see there, my point with that is kind of the different levels of feedback that you get, and the kind of how important it is to gather that, because there might be things that they're not aware of, and this is their direct team that they're working with on a daily basis. So it's really important they kind of take that on board and work out what their actions are. And it's all in the kind of with the objective of being more open and transparent across the business. So Chloe or any of the panelists, I don't know if you guys have got anything to add to that or anything that you kind of take from that feedback. No, everyone's all quiet.
I just think it's refreshing to see. It's refreshing to see that this spans like across both, like right at the top and right at the bottom of the business, and that everybody's going through it. And it's a great example that's being set for everyone else.
Yeah,
so
and
I really appreciate that.
I think like nobody's perfect. I think sometimes you think of, you know, George and Jan, like incredible inspirational business leaders, but everybody has areas to develop. And I think that's like what I would take from it.
Good. All right. Is there any questions from anyone in the audience at all before we wrap up? No, I don't think anything's coming through. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. We've recorded this session, so we'll make it available on the Academy or the terminal later on today. And yeah, just give us your feedback and let us know if you want any more guidance on the Level Up program.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.